Since the dawn of civilization, humans have been drawn to the shadows beneath our feet, to the hidden realms whispered about in fireside tales and etched into ancient texts. Every culture, from the misty valleys of Greece to the sprawling empires of Mesoamerica, has spun its own version of the underworld, a place where the dead wander, where gods pass judgment, and where secrets older than time itself lie waiting. These stories aren't just relics of the past, they pulse with a strange, unsettling energy even today, tapping into something deep within us, a primal curiosity about what lies beyond the veil of life. Think about it. Why do these legends persist across centuries? Why do we still shudder at the thought of Hades' cold grip or the twisting labyrinths of the Egyptian Duat? Perhaps it's because the underworld isn't just a myth, it's a mirror. These tales reflect our deepest fears, our unspoken questions about mortality, justice, and the unknown. They're the dark soil where our collective imagination takes root, sprouting stories so vivid they feel less like fiction and more like forgotten history. And that's exactly where our journey begins. Today, we're diving into 25 of the most enigmatic underworld legends ever told, stories that defy time, that blur the line between nightmare and revelation. We'll walk the ashen fields of the underworld alongside heroes and tricksters, decode the cryptic rituals meant to appease ancient gods, and uncover chilling parallels between cultures separated by oceans and millennia. This isn't just a list. It's an excavation, one that will take us from the gates of hell to the golden halls of paradises lost, revealing how these haunting visions of the afterlife continue to shape who we are. So steel your nerves and step into the darkness with me. The underworld has been waiting. The oldest underworld story ever recorded doesn't come from Greece or Egypt. It comes from ancient Sumer, etched onto clay tablets over 4,000 years ago. This is the tale of Inanna, the fiery goddess of love and war, who dared to descend into Ker, the Sumerian underworld, a place so dark even the gods feared to tread. But Inanna wasn't just seeking adventure. She went with a purpose, though the ancient texts leave it hauntingly vague. Some say she sought power, others whisper she was chasing forbidden knowledge. Whatever her reason, her journey would become a blueprint for underworld myths across the ages. Here's how it unfolds. Before stepping into Ker, Inanna, knowing the underworld's ruthless laws, prepares carefully. She dons her sacred garments, a crown, a beaded necklace, a golden girdle, each piece a symbol of her divine authority. Then she instructs her loyal servant, Ninchuba, to raise the alarm if she doesn't return. It's a clue that even a goddess understands the danger ahead. When Inanna knocks at Ker's towering gates, the gatekeeper, Neti, demands to know why she's come. Her reply is cryptic: "I have come to witness the funeral rites of my sister's husband." But Ker's queen, Ereshkigal, Inanna's own sister, isn't fooled. She senses the threat in this uninvited visit and orders Neti to let Inanna in, but only after stripping her of every piece of divine regalia at each of the underworld's 7 gates. One by one, Inanna is unmade. Her crown, her necklace, her robe, all taken until she stands naked and powerless before Ereshkigal's throne. Then, in a moment charged with primal terror, the Anuna, the judges of the dead, fix their gaze upon her and utter the fatal decree. Inanna is turned to a corpse hung on a hook like butchered meat. Above ground, the world begins to wither, crops fail, animals go barren. The life force that once flowed from Inanna's presence drains away. But this isn't just a story of death, it's about rebirth. Through cunning and divine intervention, Inanna is restored to life. Her servant Ninchuba rallies the gods, and Enki, the god of wisdom, fashions 2 beings from the dirt beneath his nails to slip into Ker and revive Inanna with the food and water of life. Yet even resurrection comes with a price. The underworld demands a replacement, and Inanna, now changed by her ordeal, must choose who will take her place among the dead. What makes this myth so enduring? It's more than just a thrilling tale. Inanna's descent mirrors the cycles of nature, the dying and rebirth of the seasons, the descent of the moon before it waxes again. But deeper still, it's a story about transformation. Inanna doesn't return the same goddess who left. She's been humbled, stripped bare, forced to confront the shadowy side of power. And that's a theme that echoes through later myths: Orpheus losing Eurydice, Persephone tasting the pomegranate seeds. The underworld doesn't just take. It changes you. No myth captures the agony of love lost and the fragility of second chances quite like the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. In the lush valleys of ancient Greece, Orpheus wasn't just a musician. His lyre could bend the will of nature itself. Trees leaned closer to listen, rivers slowed their currents, even the gods paused when he played. But no melody, no matter how divine, could shield him from the cruel twist of fate that would send him spiraling into the underworld. Eurydice, his bride, barely had time to dance at their wedding before a viper's bite stole her life, and here's where the story takes its first chilling turn. Orpheus doesn't rage against the heavens or resign himself to grief. He does the unthinkable. He walks into Hades, armed with nothing but his music and desperation. The rivers of the dead part for him. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, lays down his heads and whimpers like a pup. Even the shades of the damned stop their wailing to weep at his song. When he finally stands before Hades and Persephone, his plea isn't just heard, it's felt. The god of the underworld, moved for the first time in eternity, agrees to release Eurydice on one impossible condition. Orpheus must lead her back to the living world without once turning to look at her. Now, this isn't just a test of patience. That don't look back rule is layered with meaning. Some say it was a trial of faith, proof that Orpheus had to trust the unseen. Others argue it mirrored ancient burial rites where the living were forbidden to gaze upon the dead lest they pull them back into the realm of shadows. But the most haunting interpretation, it's about the human inability to accept loss. Orpheus steps from sunlight, doubts, was Hades tricking him? Had Eurydice's footfalls faded? That single glance over his shoulder isn't just curiosity, it's the moment grief overpowers hope. And in an instant, Eurydice is torn from him, not with a scream, but with a whisper, farewell. What makes this myth endure isn't just its heartbreak, it's the brutal truth it reveals about desire. Orpheus had what all mourners crave, a chance to undo death, yet his own humanity sabotaged him. The underworld didn't just take Eurydice twice, it exposed the paradox of longing. Sometimes what we ache for most slips away the harder we cling. Later versions of the tale twist the knife deeper. Orpheus, broken, wanders until Maenads tear him apart, his head still singing as it floats down river. But even in fragments, his music remains, a reminder that some losses carve voids no art can fill. This story echoes beyond Greece. Compare it to Inanna's descent. Both enter the underworld willingly, both emerge transformed. But where Inanna gains wisdom, Orpheus becomes a warning. His tragedy isn't just about love, it's about the cost of doubting the darkness. The underworld, in the end, always keeps its prizes. If the descent into darkness changes those who enter, then few myths prove this as viscerally as the tale of Izanagi and Izanami. In the shimmering cosmology of Shinto belief, these two deities didn't just shape the islands of Japan, they birthed the very fabric of life. But creation has its shadow. When Izanami dies giving birth to the god of fire, her grief-stricken husband does what no mortal or god should ever attempt. He follows her into Yomi, the Japanese underworld, a realm of eternal night where the dead dwell in foul, stagnant decay. What happens next isn't just a warning, it's a primal scream about the consequences of violating sacred boundaries. Izanami, hidden in the gloom, tells Izanagi not to look upon her. She's no longer the radiant goddess he remembers, but sorrow and desperation make fools of even the divine. Ignoring her plea, Izanagi lights a torch, and in that flickering glow he sees the truth. His beloved is a rotting corpse, her once luminous skin crawling with maggots, her form fused with the putrid earth of Yomi. The horror of that moment isn't just in the gore, it's in the irreversible shattering of taboo. Inanna's shame curdles into fury. She unleashes the ugly females of Yomi, monstrous spirits who chase him through the tunnels of the underworld as he flees, blocking the exit with a boulder that seals the living and dead apart forever. But the myth doesn't end with escape. Izanagi's ordeal birthed something fundamental to Shinto practice, the concept of kegare, or spiritual pollution. His frantic rinsing in a river after fleeing Yomi becomes the prototype for Harai, the purification rituals still performed at shrines today. Every splash of water, every shaken onus of staff, echoes his desperate attempt to cleanse himself of the underworld's taint. There's a brutal poetry here. The first act of purification in Japanese myth springs not from wisdom but from trauma. What makes this story resonate across centuries is its raw humanity. Unlike Orpheus' artistic despair or Inanna's calculated risk, Izanagi's tragedy stems from a moment of unbearable vulnerability. He isn't punished for doubt or ambition, but for love so consuming it defies divine law. And in that defiance, he mirrors our own impossible longing, to see the unseen, to hold what's already gone. Yomi's boulder still stands in countless cultures today, dividing the living from the dead. Yet we keep lighting torches, hoping against all reason, to glimpse what lies beyond. While the Greeks imagined Hades as a shadowy kingdom of passive regret, the ancient Egyptians painted their underworld, the Duat, as an active gauntlet of trials where every soul had to fight for eternity. Imagine a labyrinth where gods with animal heads guard each corridor, where lakes of fire test the wicked, and where demons lurk behind hieroglyph-carved pillars. But the dead weren't helpless. They arrived armed with spells from the Book of the Dead, a personalized guidebook of incantations to outwit each supernatural threat. One spell might help them breathe underwater as they crossed the abyss of none. Another would teach them the true names of the gatekeepers, because in Egyptian belief, knowing a god's secret name gave you power over them. Yet the Duat's greatest trial wasn't its monsters. It was the climactic judgment in the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris, the green-skinned lord of the dead, presided over a ceremony far more nuanced than Hades' passive gloom. Here, your heart, not your deeds but the literal organ, was placed on a golden scale against the feather of Maat, the goddess of cosmic order. If your heart balanced, you'd earn paradise in the field of reeds. But if it sank, heavy with lies or cruelty, the crocodile-headed Ammit would devour it, erasing your soul forever. What makes this system so remarkable is its moral complexity. Unlike the Greek afterlife, where heroes and villains alike wandered as listless shades, the Duat demanded accountability. Even pharaohs weren't exempt. A humble farmer who lived justly could outweigh a king who ruled through terror. And that feather, it wasn't just about righteousness, it symbolized truth. The dead had to recite the negative confession, declaring sins they hadn't committed. I have not stolen bread from the hungry, or I have not cursed the gods. But this wasn't a loophole. Egyptians believed the heart, the seat of memory, couldn't lie when weighed. The contrast with Hades is stark. Where Greek shades were powerless, Egyptian souls actively shaped their fate. Where Hades judged none, Osiris measured all. And while both underworlds had rivers, the Nile of the Duat versus the Styx of Hades, only one promised rebirth. The field of reeds wasn't just a paradise, it mirrored Egypt's fertile banks where the dead could sow crops that grew without end. This wasn't an end but a cycle, just as Osiris himself was murdered, reassembled and resurrected. Yet for all its grandeur, the Duat held a chilling warning. Those unprepared, those without the right spells, or whose hearts betrayed them, faced a second death more final than the first. No wonder Egyptians buried their dead with amulets, scrolls, and tiny Ushabti dolls to labor for them in the afterlife. They knew the underworld wasn't just a destination. It was an examination, and eternity hung in the balance. While Greek heroes ventured into the underworld for love or wisdom, Rome's greatest descent, Aeneas's journey in the Aeneid, wasn't just personal. It was political. Virgil's epic reshaped the afterlife into propaganda, a mirror for Emperor Augustus's vision of imperial destiny. When Aeneas steps into the Sibyl's cavern, reeking of sulfur and echoing with unseen whispers, he isn't merely seeking his father's ghost. He's walking into a carefully staged spectacle, one where every tortured soul and golden prophecy serves to justify Rome's bloody rise to power. The Sibyl, his frenzied guide, doesn't just recite warnings, she embodies them. Her voice scrapes like broken marble as she describes Tartarus's chasm below, where giants who challenge the gods writhe in eternal chains, but Aeneas doesn't linger there. His path bends toward Elysium, where his father Anchises waits among the virtuous dead. What unfolds isn't just a reunion, it's a parade of future Roman glory. Anchises points to spirits yet unborn kings, consuls, even Augustus himself, all destined to emerge from Aeneas's bloodline. The message is unmistakable: Rome's wars aren't conquests. Their fate, yet Virgil's genius lies in the shadows between these grand visions. When Aeneas spots Dido, the Carthaginian queen who took her own life after he abandoned her, her silence cuts deeper than any lament. She turns away, as unyielding as flint, a ghostly rebuke to the empire's moral cost. Even Anchises' prophecy admits the price. Others will forge breathing bronze more softly, but you, Roman, must rule. This underworld isn't just about triumph. It's about sacrifice, the lives, loves, and mercies crushed beneath Rome's march. The Aeneid's underworld feels eerily modern in its contradictions. Virgil, writing under Augustus's patronage, had to celebrate Rome's power while acknowledging its scars. His Tartarus brims with sinners who mirror real political foes, while Elysium glows with flattery for the emperor. But in Dido's silence, in the brief tremor of Aeneas's voice when he begs her forgiveness, we glimpse something raw beneath the propaganda. The underworld here isn't just a stage for heroes. It's where empires confront what they've destroyed to exist. In the frozen wastes of Norse belief, death wasn't a single destination. It was a fork in the road, and the path you took depended on how you lived. For the chosen warriors, there was Valhalla, a roaring hall where the Einherjar feasted and fought until Ragnarök. But for those who died in sickness, old age, or dishonor, their fate was Helheim, a realm so grim even Odin himself couldn't escape its pull when his time came. Helheim wasn't just a place of punishment, it was a suffocating limbo, a world of mist and creeping cold where the dishonored dead wandered without purpose. Its ruler, Hel, was no mere caretaker. Half her body was alive, flesh pale as moonlight, while the other half was rotting corpse, a walking mirror of her domain's duality. She didn't torture souls, she didn't need to. The true horror of Helheim was its emptiness, its vast halls echoing with the whispers of those who'd never again feel the warmth of a fire or the clash of steel. And then there was Garma. If Cerberus was Hades' loyal watchdog, Garma was something far more primal, a monstrous hound with jaws dripping venom, chained at the entrance to Hell's realm. His howls were said to shake Yggdrasil itself, the great world tree, and when Ragnarök came, he'd break free to join the final battle, his fangs stained with the blood of gods. But until that day, he stood as a living barrier, ensuring no one left Helheim once they'd crossed its threshold. The contrast with Valhalla couldn't be starker. Where Odin's hall rang with laughter and the clashing of practiced swords, Helheim was silent but for the drip of dew from lifeless trees. Where the Einherjar drank from never-empty mead horns, the dead in Hell's domain ate from a dish called hunger and a knife called famine. Even their afterlife was a reflection of Norse values. Glory wasn't just rewarded, it was demanded. To die without it meant an eternity in the grey. Yet Helheim wasn't purely a place of despair. In some sagas, it's where Balder, the beloved god of light, waited after his tragic death, a hostage in the underworld until Ragnarok's fires would free him. This duality, suffering and potential rebirth, echoes through Norse cosmology. Even in Hell's domain, there's a thread of hope, a whisper that no fate, no matter how bleak, is truly final. What makes this underworld so compelling is its brutal honesty. The Norse didn't sugarcoat death. They understood that not everyone could die with a sword in hand, but they also refused to pretend all endings were equal. Helheim is the shadow of Valhalla's light, a reminder that in a world of ice and fire, even the afterlife reflects the unyielding truth of how you lived. Beneath the tangled roots of the Mesoamerican world tree, where jaguars prowl and ceiba branches scrape the sky, lies Xibalba, the Maya underworld, but this isn't some passive realm of shadows. Xibalba is a sentient, hungry place, its very name translating to place of fright. Here, the death gods don't merely judge souls, they toy with them, orchestrating a lethal game of strategy and deception. And no myth captures this deadly dance better than the story of the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xibalba. Their tale begins generations earlier with their father and uncle, also named Hunahpu, lured into Xibalba after their raucous ball game annoyed the lords of death. The twins' journey is a revenge plot wrapped in cosmic significance. When they descend into the underworld, they're not just avenging their ancestors, they're challenging the very order of life and death. The trials they face are horrifyingly inventive. A house of gloom where darkness clings like tar, a house of knives where blades spring alive, a house of cold so frigid it steals breath midair. Yet the twins outwit each trap, not with brute strength, but with cunning, mocking the death god's illusions, turning their own tricks against them. The climax unfolds in the ball court, where the twins deliberately lose their heads, literally allowing the Xibalbans to grind their bones into dust and cast them into a river. But this seeming defeat is a ruse. From the waters they resurrect as fishmen, then as vagabond performers, dancing and slicing themselves apart before magically reassembling. When the death gods demand the same spectacle, the twins oblige, only to accidentally leave the lords of Xibalba in pieces. The message is clear: the underworld's cruelty can be mirrored, then weaponized. Meanwhile, to the north, the Aztecs envisioned Mictlan as a 9-layered gauntlet of attrition, where souls endured a 4-year journey of symbolic trials. Unlike the Maya's focus on heroic confrontation, Mictlan was a universal fate. Every soul, regardless of virtue, faced its horrors. The journey began with a river teeming with screaming souls, followed by mountains that crushed together like jaws, winds studded with obsidian blades, and a descent past the flayed Lord Mictlan Tekutli. What ties these myths together is their brutal honesty about the afterlife's demands. The Maya underworld rewarded wit and audacity, while Mictlan demanded endurance. Yet both held a paradox. The very trials meant to break souls became the forge of their transformation. In Xibalba, laughter disarmed terror. In Mictlan, persistence outlasted despair. These weren't just stories of survival. They were maps for navigating the unknown, etched in blood and shadow. Imagine being unmoored from your body, adrift in a realm where time fractures and reality warps. This is the Bardo, the Tibetan Buddhist limbo between death and rebirth, a 49-day odyssey through visions so vivid they blur the line between hallucination and revelation. Unlike the static underworlds of Greece or Egypt, the Bardo is a psychological labyrinth, its horrors and wonders conjured by the dying mind itself. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, a guide whispered into the ears of the departed, describes it with eerie precision. First comes the brilliant, clear light of pure awareness, a chance to escape the cycle of rebirth. But for most, the light fades and the true trial begins. What follows isn't just judgment, it's a gauntlet of the psyche. Peaceful deities shimmer into view, radiant with compassion, only to dissolve as wrathful ones erupt from the darkness. These aren't mere demons, they're known as the Herukas, their fangs bared, their bodies draped in flayed skins and bone ornaments. Their forms, like Vajraparava, a bull-headed colossus stomping on corpses, are enough to shatter the unprepared soul. Yet here's the paradox: these terrors are actually manifestations of the deceased's own anguish, their rage and fear made flesh. The Book of the Dead offers a lifeline. Recognize them as illusions and they'll crumple like painted screens. Fail and you're hurled toward rebirth, your next life shaped by the karma you couldn't transcend. The parallels to modern near-death experiences are uncanny. Survivors often describe floating toward a light, encountering beings of love or menace, even reliving their actions in life. But where Western accounts frame these as glimpses of heaven or hell, the Bardo suggests something more radical. The afterlife isn't a fixed place but a mirror. The HERUKAS Chinese letter fierce faces reflect our deepest wounds, while the peaceful deities embody our latent wisdom. Even the 49-day timeline finds echoes in hospital wards, where patients revived after prolonged comas report timelines eerily close to the Bardo's stages. What makes this legend endure isn't just its haunting imagery, it's the agency it grants the dying. The Book of the Dead isn't a passive script, it's a training manual for navigating consciousness itself. Monks spend decades meditating on its verses, preparing to meet their own mental projections with clarity. In a world where death is so often sanitized or feared, the Bardo insists on something profoundly empowering. The afterlife, at least in part, is what we make of it. Dante Alighieri didn't just imagine hell, he architectured it, crafting a realm so precise it could be mapped like a medieval city. In his Divine Comedy, the Inferno unfolds as a spiraling funnel of 9 concentric circles, each tier punishing sins with poetic irony. But this wasn't just fire and brimstone. Dante's hell was a moral blueprint where every torment mirrored the soul's deepest failings. Take the second circle, where the lustful, like Paolo and Francesca, are eternally whipped by hurricane winds. Their crime surrendering to passion over reason, their punishment never touching ground, just as their love never found footing in life. Yet what makes Dante's vision endure isn't just its brutality, it's its chilling intimacy. Francesca, mid-whirlwind, begs Dante to remember her story, whispering how a single kiss sealed her damnation. It's a moment so human it transcends time, the idea that love, something so pure, could become a prison. Even Dante faints from grief, forcing readers to confront hell's most unsettling truth. It's not the screams that haunt you, but the silences between them. And then there's the craftsmanship. Sandro Botticelli, centuries later, became so obsessed with Dante's geometry that he inked meticulous copperplate maps of hell's circles, cross-sectioning each level like an engineer. His renderings reveal the Inferno's grotesque precision. Traitors frozen in icy cossetus, flatterers drowned in excrement, heretics trapped in flaming tombs. Each punishment is a dark mirror reflecting the sin's essence. The greedy who hoarded wealth now push boulders endlessly against each other. The violent are submerged in boiling blood, a literal river of their own making. Dante's genius lies in the details. He populates hell not with faceless masses, but with historical figures and personal enemies. Popes who sold indulgences writhe upside down in baptismal fonts. False prophets walk with heads twisted backward, forever denied the future they claim to see. Even the geography is symbolic. Hell's narrowing shape mirrors humanity's spiritual decay, while Satan himself, a three-faced monstrosity at the pit's nadir, chews on history's ultimate traitors, Judas, Brutus, Cassius. But here's the twist. Dante's hell isn't just about divine justice, it's about human choice. The inscription over Hell's Gate doesn't blame God. It declares, "All hope abandon, ye who enter here." The damned aren't victims, they're volunteers. Every soul in the Inferno chose their path, clinging to vice despite warning. That's why Botticelli's maps matter. They don't just chart hell, they chart the human capacity for self-destruction, one circle at a time. For the Celts, the afterlife wasn't a single realm. It was a spectrum of enchantment and dread, where the same doorway might lead to eternal youth or a chase through endless night. On one side lay Duat and Osiris, the land of youth, an island veiled in mist where apple trees bore golden fruit and feasts lasted for centuries without a single guest aging a day. Heroes like Oisin, lured there by the radiant Niam of the golden hair, returned to Ireland only to crumble into dust when they stepped back onto mortal soil, proof that time in Duat and Osiris moved differently, its pleasures preserved like honey in amber. Yet just beyond its shores lurked Anon, the Welsh underworld ruled by the enigmatic Avalon. Here no feasts glittered instead. The dead joined the Xibalba circumflex and Aron's spectral hounds in a moonlit hunt across the skies. Their howls signaled doom to those below, a ghostly parallel to Odin's wild hunt. But Anon wasn't merely a place of terror. Its silver-robed inhabitants possessed cauldrons that never emptied and herds of magical swine that regenerated when eaten, gifts blurring the line between abundance and eerie repetition. The contrast between these realms shaped the Arthurian legends that followed. Avalon, the isle where Excalibur was forged and Arthur taken to heal, echoes Duat and Osiris' timelessness, a sanctuary where wounds couldn't fester and death held no dominion. Yet traces of Anon linger in tales like Culhwch and Olwen, where Arthur and his knights raid the underworld to steal its cauldron, only to find it brimming not with treasure but with undead warriors. The Celts understood duality. Their afterlife wasn't just heaven or hell, but a reflection of life's own cycles: feast and famine, chase and sanctuary, all spinning like the wheels of their chariots across an endless sky. What makes these myths resonate is their refusal to simplify. Duat and Osiris' paradise carries the sting of loss, while Anon's gloom holds strange generosity. Together, they taught that the otherworld wasn't a distant reward or punishment. It was woven into the fabric of the living, as close as the next breath and as unpredictable as the storm-lashed sea. In China's sprawling vision of the afterlife, hell isn't just a pit of fire, it's a meticulously organized courtroom where bureaucracy outlasts death itself. This is Diyu, the underworld of 18 levels, each governed by its own judge, each specializing in punishment so precise they'd make a torturer wince. Picture a soul dragged before Yanluo Wang, the stern king of hell, his ledger thick with the sins of the newly deceased. But here's the twist: your sentence isn't just about suffering, it's about balance. For every lie spoken, a demon rips out your tongue. For every grain of rice wasted in life, you swallow boiling coins. Even skipping ancestor rituals lands you in the court of mutilation, where limbs are methodically severed to match your neglect. Diyu's horrors aren't random. They're a fusion of Taoist cosmology and Buddhist karma, a hybrid hell where moral accounting crosses spiritual traditions. The Taoist layers focus on earthly misdeeds: corrupt officials stew in cauldrons, adulterers climb trees lined with razor leaves, while the Buddhist tears punish deeper spiritual failures. The 8th level, for instance, reserves special torment for those who distorted sacred texts, their bodies crushed between stone tablets engraved with the very scriptures they abused. Yet Diyu isn't just about pain, it's a machine of redemption. Souls who endure their punishments aren't doomed forever. They're reborn, often after centuries of agony, their debts cleared. This cyclical hope reflects the blend of Taoist rebirth and Buddhist enlightenment, a rare synergy in underworld lore. Even the judges themselves are eclectic. Some are deified historical figures like Bao Zheng, the incorruptible Song dynasty official, now presiding over the Court of Mirror Retribution, where your crimes replay endlessly before your eyes. What makes Diyu unforgettable isn't its brutality, but its terrifying logic. This is a hell built by a culture that revered order, where even damnation follows paperwork. The damned don't scream incoherently. They plead their cases, file appeals, and sometimes even win reduced sentences. Yet beneath the bureaucracy lurks a profound question. When justice is this precise, is it mercy or madness? To the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, the afterlife isn't a distant realm. It's woven into the very earth beneath their feet. This is the dream time, a timeless dimension where ancestors walk, creation stories live, and the land of the dead exists alongside the living world. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of Diyu or the fiery pits of Dante's Inferno, the Dreamtime's underworld is fluid, accessible through songlines, ancient pathways charted in music, dance, and rock art that stretch across the continent. These songlines aren't just maps, they're living threads connecting the present to the eternal, guiding spirits back to sacred sites where they merge with the land itself. Take the story of the Wajalag sisters, ancestral beings who journeyed through Arnhem land, their footsteps birthing waterholes and their songs shaping the terrain. When they were swallowed by the great serpent Wittage, their spirits didn't vanish, they became part of the Dreamtime, their essence lingering in the rustle of leaves and the ripple of water. To walk their songline today is to step into their story, blurring the line between past and present, living and dead. It's a concept that flips Western notions of the afterlife on their head. Where Christianity and Greek myth frame death as an irreversible departure, the Dreamtime sees it as a return, a reintegration into the cyclical pulse of creation. This contrast is starkest in the Aboriginal view of time. Western traditions depict the afterlife as a linear endpoint, heaven or hell, reward or punishment, waiting at the end of a one-way journey. But the Dreamtime is non-linear, a tapestry where every moment exists simultaneously. A rock painting isn't just a depiction of an ancestor, it's a portal to their presence. A ritual performed today doesn't commemorate the past, it activates it. When elders sing the songs of the dead, they aren't remembering, they're walking beside them. Yet the Dreamtime's underworld isn't without its shadows. Malevolent spirits like the Namorodo of the Kunwinjku people lurk at the edges of songlines, waiting to ensnare the unwary. These beings aren't devils or demons, they're manifestations of broken taboos, consequences for disturbing sacred sites or misusing knowledge. Their presence reinforces a profound truth. In a world where the spiritual and physical are inseparable, death isn't the only boundary that matters. Respect for land, for tradition, for the stories that bind both, is the thread that keeps the living and the dead in balance. What makes this legend timeless is its intimacy. The Dreamtime doesn't relegate the afterlife to some far-off realm. It breathes it into every sunrise, every rock formation, every chorus of birds at dawn. To stand in an Aboriginal landscape is to stand in the underworld's embrace, where every step echoes with the footprints of those who came before. It's a reminder that the land of the dead isn't beneath us or beyond us. It's right here, singing. Among the frozen lakes and whispering pines of Finland lies Tuonla, the island of the dead, a realm so isolated even birds struggle to reach its shores. Unlike the fiery underworlds of other myths, Tuonla is veiled in perpetual twilight, its black river winding through mist-laden marshes where the souls of ancestors drift like echoes. The only bridge to this forbidden land, a maiden, young yet ancient, who stands sentinel with a smile as sharp as ice. And it was here, in the heart of the Kalevala, Finland's epic saga, that the wizard Väinämöinen dared to voyage, not with weapons but with song. Väinämöinen's quest was no reckless gamble. He came seeking the words of creation, secrets whispered only by the dead. But Tuonla's river, frothing with spikes and spinning blades, seemed impassable until the hero did what no warrior could. He sang, his voice, honed by decades of weaving spells into melody, stilled the water's fury. Yet the maiden on the shore wasn't fooled. Many have tried to charm their way across, she taunted, her voice dripping with the boredom of eternity. None leave alive. What happens next reveals the true power of Finnish magic. Väinämöinen doesn't battle or bargain. He transforms into a serpent, slithering past the maiden's watchful gaze. But Tuonla's magic is a two-edged sword. The dead refuse to speak unless the living become like them, if only for a moment. so Vainamarainen drinks from their cup, a draught of oblivion that nearly traps him forever. Only his song, now a lullaby for the underworld itself, lulls the guardians to sleep long enough for his escape. The lesson here isn't just about cunning. In most myths, heroes conquer death with strength or trickery. But in the Kalevala, music is the ultimate power, a force that can calm rivers, deceive gods, and even momentarily silence death's whisper. Tuonela doesn't yield to steel, it yields to harmony, yet there's a haunting footnote to this tale. Later, when another hero, Lemminkainen, attempts the same journey, his arrogance drowns him in the river. The difference: Vainamarainen respected the underworld's rules. He understood that Tuonela isn't just a place but a state of being. To enter, you must become part of its song. And sometimes the melody doesn't let go. Deep beneath the birch forests and wheat fields of the Slavic world lies Nav, a kingdom where the dead don't just rest, they shape the very rhythm of life above. Unlike the fiery torment of Christian hell or the gloomy stillness of Hades, Nav is a place of eerie duality. Here, the ancestors, known as Navki or Mavki, drift through subterranean rivers and caverns, their presence tethered to the turning of the seasons. When winter's grip tightens, Nav's influence rises, its spirits breathing frost into the soil. But with the first thaw, they retreat, allowing seeds to sprout and life to renew. This wasn't just mythology, it was a cycle woven into the fabric of Slavic survival, where the dead were neither feared nor forgotten, but honored as partners in the dance of harvest and famine. The connection between Nav and the living world pulsed strongest during Kolyada, the midwinter festival marking the year's darkest hours. Villagers dressed as spirits, their faces hidden behind grotesque masks, paraded through snow-laden streets. They weren't mocking the dead, they were inviting them. Bonfires blazed to guide the Navki home, while offerings of bread and honey were left at crossroads, those liminal spaces where the veil between worlds thinned. The rituals weren't mere superstition. They were a pact, a reminder that fertility sprang from the underworld's cooperation. Even the songs sung during Kolyada held double meanings, their melodies meant to lull restless spirits while their lyrics secretly mocked greedy landlords, blending reverence with rebellion. Yet Nav had its shadows. Some spirits, particularly those who died violently or without proper rites, refused to stay beneath the earth. These weren't ghosts, they were Eupyri, the early Slavic vampires. Unlike the aristocratic Draculas of later folklore, Eupyri were grotesque revenants, bloated with stolen blood, their mouths stained from chewing their own burial shrouds. To stop them, villagers would exhume corpses, staking them through the heart or decapitating them, then reburying them face down so their remaining strength would drain into Nav. The most fearsome of all was the Styr, a twin-souled being born with two sets of teeth, destined to claw its way back from the grave. These weren't just monsters, they were warnings. A corpse buried without the correct rituals, without the right songs, the right coins for the ferryman, could unravel the balance between Nav and the living. What makes this underworld so distinct is its intimacy. The Slavs didn't build monumental tombs or elaborate death cults. They whispered to their dead over shared meals, left windows open so spirits could visit during ancestral nights, and buried their loved ones with tools, a spindle, a sickle, to ensure they'd remain useful in Nav. This was an underworld where the dead labored alongside the living, where every harvest began with their blessing and every famine whispered of their displeasure. Even today, traces linger. In Poland, the Diyu ceremonies honor the dead with feasts. In Ukraine, villagers still avoid sweeping dust out the door after sunset, lest they accidentally sweep away a visiting ancestor. Nav's legacy isn't just in folklore, it's in the land itself. Those rolling fields of golden grain, they grew from the bones of the forgotten, the first spring flower pushing through snow. A sign the Navki had loosened their grip. The Slavic underworld wasn't a place of endings. It was the root cellar of existence where life and death fermented together, brewing a world that could never truly be divided. In the warm Pacific waves that lap against Hawaii's shores, death isn't an end, it's a fork in the coral reef. The ancient Hawaiians believed the afterlife split into two currents, one for the honored, the other for the forgotten. Heroes and chiefs dove headfirst into Po, the primordial darkness where the gods themselves were born, while ordinary souls faded into Lua o Milu, a shadowed underworld ruled by the elusive god Milu. But this wasn't just a binary of reward and punishment. The journey to either realm hinged on something deeper: how you lived, how you died, and the invisible tether of Omakua, the ancestral spirits watching from the deep. Po wasn't merely a paradise, it was the black womb of creation, a place of potential so vast it terrified even the gods. To reach it, the dead had to leap from the leaping places of souls, sea cliffs like Kaina Point where the ocean churned below. Those who'd lived with courage and purpose would plunge like Hanu, the sacred sea turtles, vanishing into the depths only to emerge transformed in Po's golden mist. But those who hesitated, who'd been selfish or cruel, would find themselves washed ashore instead, dragged by Milu's servants into his realm of endless twilight. Lua o Milu wasn't a place of fire or ice, but of stagnation, a grey expanse where spirits wandered without purpose, their voices too faint to reach the living. Yet no Hawaiian soul journeyed alone. The Omakua, often manifesting as sharks, owls, or even gusts of wind, guided their descendants through the afterlife's perils. These weren't distant deities, they were family. A warrior might recognize his grandfather in the prowling tiger shark that nudged his body safely past the reef. A grieving mother might hear her ancestors whisper in the cry of an elapeo bird. The bond between the living and the dead was so tangible that harming an Omakua animal, like killing a guardian shark, was considered tantamount to murder. This belief sculpted Hawaiian life down to the bone. Fishermen left offerings for shark Omakua to ensure safe voyages. Families buried the umbilical cords of newborns in special shrines to bind them to their ancestral protectors. But here's where the legend twists. Milu's realm wasn't always a final sentence. Some chants tell of souls bargaining their way free, offering hidden knowledge of the living world in exchange for release. Others describe Omakua leading daring rescues, their jaws clamping around lost spirits to drag them back toward the light. Even in Lua o Milu, redemption flickered. If you remembered the names of your ancestors, if you'd earned their loyalty, the shadows couldn't hold you forever. What makes this duality so compelling is its fluidity. Unlike the rigid heavens and hells of other cultures, Hawaii's afterlife reflected the ocean's nature, sometimes merciless, sometimes merciful, but always in motion. The dead weren't judged by gods alone. They were measured by the currents they'd ridden in life, the bridges they'd built between this world and the next. And in that balance, even Milu's realm held a whisper of hope, that no soul is truly lost while the waves still carry their name. Long before heaven and hell were split by the sword of Abrahamic judgment, Persia's Zoroastrians envisioned a razor-edge bridge suspended between light and darkness, the Chinvat. This wasn't just a crossing, it was a cosmic reckoning where every soul's footsteps echoed the weight of their choices. Picture a span no wider than a thread stretching over a yawning abyss. To the righteous, it appeared broad as a highway, guiding them toward the house of song, a paradise of fragrant orchards and eternal spring. But for the wicked, the bridge twisted into a blade, its edge sharp enough to send them spiraling into Duzak, a pit where darkness wasn't just empty, it was alive, a sentient force that fed on lies and corrosion. The brilliance of this system lay in its precision. Zoroaster's followers didn't believe in arbitrary damnation. Their dualistic cosmos balanced on one unshakable truth: action dictated destiny. At death, each soul faced a 3-day trial. Demons called divas would unspool the deceased's life like a scroll, recounting every kindness and cruelty. But the true test came on the bridge itself, where a person's own Dina, their spiritual double, manifested. For the virtuous, she appeared as a radiant maiden, her very presence steadying their steps. For the corrupt, she transformed into a rotting hag, her stench so vile it shattered their balance. This wasn't divine punishment, it was self-exposure. The bridge merely revealed what the soul had already become, and here's where Zoroastrian echoes ripple through history. The Chinvat's influence bleeds into Judaism's Gehenna, Islam's Sirat, and Christianity's purgatory. Even the concept of a final judgment found in the Book of Revelation bears striking parallels to Zoroastrian eschatology, where the savior figure Saoshyant would resurrect the dead for a last trial by fire. But the bridge's true legacy is subtler. It introduced an idea radical for its time. Morality wasn't about appeasing gods, it was about aligning with Ashar, the cosmic order. A merchant who cheated customers didn't just anger Ahura Mazda, he ruptured the fabric of reality itself, and Duzak's maw awaited those who unraveled the threads. Yet Duzak wasn't eternal. In a departure from later hells, Zoroastrianism offered a glimpse of redemption. After 12,000 years, even the worst souls would be purified by a river of molten metal, their sins burned away until they too could join Ahura Mazda's light. This wasn't mercy, it was mathematics. Evil, in the end, couldn't outweigh the universe's inherent balance. The bridge judged, the abyss cleansed, and the scales forever sought equilibrium. What makes this underworld endure isn't its fire or its fear, but its terrifying fairness. The Chinvat didn't care about prayers or rituals, it measured deeds. And in that stark accountability, we see the birth of an idea that would shape half the world's faiths, that the afterlife isn't just a destination, it's a reflection. Deep in the Smoky Mountains where the mist never lifts, the Cherokee tell of noon. Nihi, the darkening land, a hidden realm where the spirits dance on grounds untouched by time. Unlike the fiery underworlds of other cultures, this place hums with a quieter sorrow, its borders marked by the remnants of sacred fires long gone cold. Here, the spirits of ancestors move in endless ceremony, their feet brushing the same earth they once walked in life, yet their forms shimmer like reflections in disturbed water. But guardians lurk in these shadows too, and none strike greater terror than Actina, the horned serpent whose scales glitter with stolen starlight and whose breath carries the scent of thunderstorms. Actina wasn't always a monster. In the oldest stories, it was once a celestial being, a keeper of cosmic balance. But pride twisted it, and now it coils around the darkening land's borders, its diamond-shaped crest pulsing like a beacon to warn away the unworthy. To glimpse Actina was to court death, yet the boldest shaman sought it anyway, for embedded in its forehead lay the Ulun Suti, a crystal that granted visions of the future. The ritual to claim it was a gamble with oblivion. A hunter had to shoot the serpent precisely between its scales while standing knee-deep in a sacred river, then dive into the water to retrieve the crystal as Actina's thrashing body turned the currents to froth. Even success came at a cost. The Ulunusuti carried a whisper of the serpent's rage, and those who wielded it too recklessly found their dreams crowded with fangs and floodwaters. But the true tragedy of the darkening land lies in what was lost when the Cherokee were forced onto the Trail of Tears, traditional burials where the deceased were laid to rest in cedar boxes atop platforms, their spirits coaxed westward by chants and tobacco smoke, became impossible during the brutal march. Families hid their dead in shallow graves by the roadside, whispering prayers as soldiers hurried them along. Without the proper rites, many feared these souls would never find the darkening land, left to wander the edges of the living world instead. Even now, elders speak of restless light seen flickering along the trail's route, lanterns held by spirits still searching for the path home. What makes this underworld unique is its intimacy with the land itself. The darkening land wasn't some abstract afterlife, it was woven into the very mountains, rivers, and caves the Cherokee knew by heart. When they were ripped from that land, the rupture didn't just scatter a people. It fractured the afterlife's geography, leaving spirits unmoored. Actina still slithers through the stories, but its territory has narrowed, its once mighty realm reduced to whispers carried on the wind. The darkening land endures, but like the Cherokee, it bears scars that even time hasn't softened. Avalon. The name alone conjures visions of mist-shrouded orchards, golden apples that never rot, and a sword glinting beneath still waters. But beneath its idyllic veneer, this Arthurian island of the dead hides a duality as sharp as Excalibur's edge. On one hand, Avalon is a sanctuary where Morgan Le Fay and her 9 sisters weave spells to heal Arthur's mortal wounds. On the other, it's a threshold, a liminal space where the living and the dead blur, its soil steeped in whispers older than Camelot itself. And nowhere is this paradox more tangible than at Glastonbury Tor, that strange, spiral-hilled monument rising from England's Somerset levels. The Tor isn't just a hill, it's a crossroads of ley lines, those invisible energy paths said to connect sacred sites across the globe. To stand atop its ruined tower is to stand at the meeting point of forces even modern science can't fully explain. Compasses spin erratically here. Visitors report phantom chimes, as if hearing bells from the submerged church of Uniswitrin, the Tor's older Celtic name. Some say these disruptions are the land's memory of Avalon, which medieval chroniclers insisted wasn't an island at all but a valley flooded long ago, its secrets drowned beneath the marshes. And when archaeologists uncovered human remains in the nearby Glastonbury Lake village, dating back to Arthur's supposed era, the legend gained eerie weight. Was Avalon always a realm of the dead, disguised as a paradise? Enter the Morrigan. This Celtic goddess of war and sovereignty, often seen as a triple entity of crow, hag, and maiden, casts a long shadow over Avalon's lore. While Morgan Le Fay plays healer in Arthurian tales, her name derived from Morrigan hints at a darker lineage. The Morrigan didn't just preside over battles, she chose who would die. Her crows feasted on the slain, so why would Arthur, the once and future king, seek solace in a domain tied to such a figure? Perhaps because death and healing are 2 sides of the same blade. The Morrigan didn't just end lives, she guided souls to the otherworld. Much like Morgan Le Fay ferried Arthur to Avalon's shores, Glastonbury's own history mirrors this duality. The Tor's terraces form a labyrinthine path echoing the 7-circuit cretan design, a symbol of death and rebirth. Pilgrims once climbed it on their knees, a physical ordeal meant to mirror the soul's journey. Even the Tor's infamous Glastonbury zodiac, a vast landscape formation of animal shapes, aligns with Celtic star lore, mapping an underworld in plain sight. Avalon, then, isn't just a place, it's a process, a crucible where kings go to die, to sleep, and eventually to rise again. This isn't fantasy, it's alchemy. The golden apples of Avalon, like the biblical fruit of Eden, promise knowledge. But at what cost? Arthur's rest there isn't passive, it's transformative. The land doesn't just heal wounds, it dissolves old identities, preparing the soul for what comes next. And that's the true magic of Avalon. Whether as a whispered Celtic otherworld or the backdrop of Arthur's legend, it remains the ultimate liminal space where endings are beginnings, and every cure carries the ghost of the curse it undoes. The Arctic wind howls across the ice, carrying whispers of Sedna, the one-fingered goddess who rules Adlivon, the Inuit underworld where sea creatures go to die. Picture a realm beneath frozen waves, its caverns lined with the restless souls of seals, walruses, and whales, all waiting for Sedna's call. But this isn't just a graveyard. Adlivon is a courtroom where the balance between human survival and divine wrath hangs by a thread. Sedna's story begins with betrayal. Once a mortal woman, she was thrown into the frigid ocean by her own father, her fingers clinging to the kayak's edge until he hacked them off one by one. As she sank, her severed fingers transformed into the first sea mammals, and Sedna herself became something far more powerful, the mother and jailer of all marine life. Now her tangled hair, a nest of eels and seaweed, clogs the hunting grounds when she's angered, starving entire villages. Only the Angakuk, the shaman, can soothe her. Their journey to Avalon is a perilous trance, their spirit descending through layers of ice and darkness to comb the knots from Sedna's hair with bare hands, their breath syncing with the rhythmic pulse of the sea. The rituals are precise. A single misstep, a disrespectful hunter, wasted meat can snap Sedna's patience. When famine strikes, elders scrutinize every taboo broken. Were animal bones left to rot instead of being returned to the sea? Did someone speak ill of the hunt? The Angakok's task isn't just appeasement, it's negotiation. They bring offerings, but also stories, pleas whispered through the cracks in the ice, reminding Sedna of the people who still honor her sacrifice. What makes Avalon unforgettable is its intimacy with the natural world. Unlike abstract hells of fire or void, this underworld mirrors the Inuit's daily reality, the ice that feeds and kills, the sea that gives and takes. Sedna isn't a distant deity. She's the storm at the edge of the village, the seal that avoids the harpoon, the hunger that gnaws when respect fades. Even her physical form, part human, part sea creature, blurs the line between the hunted and the divine, a reminder that every animal taken is kin to the goddess herself. Yet there's a haunting duality here. Sedna is both victim and avenger, creator and destroyer. The same hands that were severed to birth life now withhold it in anger. The shaman's trance isn't just a ritual, it's a reenactment of the original betrayal, a plea for forgiveness woven into the very act of survival. In this way, Avalon isn't just an afterlife. It's the icy heart of a covenant, one that demands respect, demands memory, and above all, demands that no sacrifice, divine or human, ever be forgotten. In the flickering firelight of ancient Persia, where the teachings of Zoroaster carved the cosmic battle between light and darkness, there exists a realm unlike any other underworld, the Arjeng. This isn't a place of external torment, no lakes of fire or gnashing teeth. Instead, it's a hall of mirrors where the soul comes face to face with its own conscience, a courtroom where the prosecutor, judge, and jury are all the same, you. Picture this: after death, every soul must cross the Chinvat bridge, but those whose sins and virtues hang in precarious balance aren't cast immediately into Duzak's abyss or lifted to the House of Song. They're sent to the Arjeng, a twilight expanse where time bends like molten glass. Here, the soul wanders through endless corridors of memory, forced to relive every action, every choice from the perspective of those they affected. A merchant who shortchanged a widow doesn't just remember the act, he becomes the widow, feeling her hunger, her desperation. A soldier who spared an enemy in a moment of mercy doesn't just recall the decision, he experiences the ripple of lives saved because of it. This is judgment stripped of all pretense, where the soul's own Dina, its spiritual twin, acts not as a guide but as an unflinching witness. What makes the Arjeng so unnerving are its echoes in modern ghost lore. Think of the countless stories where spirits aren't trapped by external forces, but by their own guilt or unresolved trauma. The Victorian White Lady who haunts the stairs where she abandoned her child. The soldier's ghost eternally reliving his battlefield hesitation. These aren't just tales, they're fragments of the Arjeng's logic leaking into collective memory. Even the concept of the life review in near-death experiences, where individuals report seeing their deeds from others' eyes, mirrors Zoroastrian cosmology with startling clarity. Yet the Arjeng isn't purely punitive. Unlike the Christian purgatory where pain purges sin, this realm offers something far more profound: empathy as the ultimate reckoning. Souls aren't punished by gods or demons, they're shattered by their own awakening. A cruel landlord doesn't burn, he starves alongside the tenants he exploited, cycle after cycle, until comprehension cracks him open. The Arjeng's torment is education, its cruelty is clarity, and here's the twist: this isn't eternal. Zoroastrian texts hint that even the most stubborn souls eventually break through their denial. The moment a spirit truly understands the weight of its actions, the Arjeng dissolves, and the Chinvat bridge reforms beneath their feet, now steadier, wider. It's a vision of justice that feels startlingly modern, rehabilitation over retribution, self-awareness as the path to redemption. Perhaps this is why the Arjang lingers in our collective subconscious, resurfacing in ghost stories and psychological thrillers. It taps into a truth deeper than hellfire, that the worst prison isn't one built by gods, but by the walls we refuse to see. When we whisper about spirits doomed to repeat their mistakes, we're not just spinning campfire tales. We're remembering an ancient belief that the afterlife, in the end, might just be the mirror we can't look away from. High above the Philippine archipelago, where the emerald jungles brush against the clouds, the ancient Tagalog people whispered of a tree so vast its roots cradled the underworld while its branches scratched the heavens. This was the Casamon, not just a realm of the dead, but a colossal arboreal court where every soul's fate swung like a leaf in the wind, judged by deeds etched into the bark of time. The journey there was a gauntlet of teeth and terror. To reach its base, spirits had to navigate a river patrolled by Berberoka, crocodile-headed demons that could swallow a man whole, then trick him into reassembling just to feast again. And if you survived that, the tree itself was guarded by a swang, shape-shifting sentinels with tongues long enough to lick the sins from your bones. Pre-colonial Filipinos didn't fear a uniform hellfire. The Casamon's judgment was dizzyingly specific. Those who harmed children dangled from branches swarmed with mancuculum, spirit wasps that stung without end. Lyres were woven into the tree's bark, their mouths sewn shut by spider silk spun from the webs of Anito, ancestor spirits who served as both jurors and jailers. Yet the tree also bore fruit, golden bunga that glowed like lanterns for the righteous, nourished by the compost of their kindness. The Casamon wasn't just punishment, it was ecology. Rot and renewal fed its roots, ensuring the cycle of life and death never stilled. The deeper magic lay in its animist origins. Before Spanish galleons brought the concept of sin, the Tagalog universe thrived on balance. Souls weren't damned, they were recalibrated. A murderer might spend centuries as a tick-tick, a winged ghoul cursed to crave the very life he took until his hunger taught him empathy. A neglectful mother could transform into a lambana, a moth-winged spirit doomed to search for phantom children in the moonlight. These weren't eternal sentences, they were transformations meant to mend the cosmic fabric. Even the tree itself was alive, its gnarled limbs shifting to mirror the moral weight of each era. Today, traces of the Casamon survive in folk Catholicism's shadows. The Purgatorio of colonial friars borrowed its tiered justice, while the Kappa, a cigar-smoking giant now relegated to spooking travelers, once served as a gatekeeper to the tree's lowest branches. But the true testament to its power, the way Filipino psychologists still use pagbabalik lube, returned to the inner self as therapy, echoing the Casamon's core belief. No soul is irredeemable, only unfinished. The tree may have faded from worship, but its roots still grip the archipelago's subconscious, whispering that justice, like growth, takes time. Beneath the scorched deserts of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates carved their serpentine paths, lies Urkala, the Babylonian underworld, a kingdom of dust and echoes ruled by the formidable Ereshkigal. But this realm wasn't always hers alone. The myth of Era and Nergal reveals a chilling power struggle, one where ambition and divine plague collide in a coup that reshaped the afterlife itself. Nergal, the god of war and pestilence, wasn't content to linger in the shadows of the pantheon. His domain was chaos, his touch a whisper of fever, and his arrival in Urkala began as an insult. When the gods above slighted Ereshkigal by sending no envoy to her feast, Nergal was dispatched as an apology, a decision they'd soon regret. The moment he crossed Urkala's gates, something unexpected happened. Ereshkigal, the queen of the dead, whose very name meant Lady of the Great Earth, found herself captivated by the god of destruction. For the first time in eternity, loneliness met its match in fury. But Nergal's stay wasn't romantic, it was strategic. Hidden in the folds of this tale lies the Tablet of Destinies, a celestial artifact granting its wielder control over the cosmic order. Some versions of the myth suggest Nergal sought it, leveraging Ereshkigal's isolation to infiltrate her throne room. Others claim their union was genuine until it wasn't. When Nergal abruptly fled back to the upper world, Ereshkigal's grief curdled into rage. She sent her vizier, Namta, to drag him back, threatening to unleash the dead upon the living if the gods refused. What follows is a divine game of brinkmanship. Nergal returns not as a prisoner but as a conqueror. With a legion of plagued demons at his back, he storms Urkala, seizing Ereshkigal's throne by force. Yet the twist isn't in the violence, it's in the compromise. The gods decree that Nergal will rule beside her, not overthrow her. The tablet of destinies remains untouched, but the balance of power shifts irrevocably. Now plagues and wars on earth are mirrored by upheavals in the underworld, their dual reign a reflection of life's inseparable dance with death. What makes this myth so unsettling is its subtext. Ereshkigal's loneliness isn't just emotional, it's political. A queen without peers, her authority hinges on isolation. Nergal's invasion cracks that foundation, exposing the fragility of even divine rule. And the tablet, it's more than a MacGuffin. In Babylonian cosmology, controlling destinies means controlling the cycle of creation and decay. That it remains beyond Nergal's grasp hints at a deeper truth. Some forces, even for a god of annihilation, are too vast to claim. This isn't just a story of gods and ghosts. It's a parable of powers cost, how the hunger for dominion can hollow out even death itself. Ereshkigal's throne endures, but her solitude is shattered. Nergal gains a kingdom, but at the price of eternal partnership, and Urkala, it becomes something new, a realm where plague and silence share the scepter, a reminder that the underworld, like the world above, is shaped by the gods who dare to challenge its darkness. Beneath the sands of Egypt, buried for centuries in a sealed jar near Nag Hammadi, lies a secret so explosive it redefines the very nature of reality. The Gnostic Gospels, unearthed in 1945, reveal a cosmos far stranger than anything in Dante or Homer, a universe where humanity isn't just mortal, but imprisoned, trapped in a false world crafted by malevolent gods called the Archons. These aren't the benevolent creators of Sunday school lessons. According to texts like the Apocryphon of John, the Demiurge, a blind, arrogant entity who thinks itself the one true God, molded our world from chaos and ignorance, shackling divine sparks of the human soul into flesh and bone. His minions, the Archons, patrol this prison like cosmic jailers, feeding on human suffering and fear, their greatest weapon the illusion that this is all there is. What makes this myth so chilling isn't just its ancient roots, it's how eerily it mirrors modern conspiracy theories. The Archons echo in today's whispers of shadowy elites manipulating history, of simulated realities and hidden controllers. The Gnostics called their salvation gnosis, a Greek word meaning knowledge, but not the dry facts of textbooks. This was forbidden insight. The realization that the soul's true home lies beyond the Demiurge's fabricated sky, in a realm of pure light called the Pleroma. To awaken was to see the Archons' tricks for what they were, the false prophecies of organized religion, the distractions of materialism, even the cycles of war and scarcity, all designed to keep humanity docile and forgetful. The parallels to contemporary thought are unsettling. When conspiracy theorists speak of breaking the matrix or escaping the system, they're unknowingly channeling Gnostic resistance. The Archons' tactics, fear, division, illusion resemble modern critiques of media manipulation and social control. Even the Demiurge's blindness finds its echo in the idea of leaders who don't truly understand the systems they enforce, blindly upholding structures older than themselves. Yet where modern conspiracies often spiral into paranoia, the Gnostics offered a path out. Their rituals weren't about overthrowing governments, but inner liberation, meditations to remember the soul's divine origin, passwords to bypass archonic traps after death. But here's the twist: the Archons weren't just external monsters. Gnostic texts hint that they also lurk within, in the form of ego, addiction, and despair. The Demiurge's greatest trick wasn't building the prison, it was convincing the prisoners they'd built it themselves. This psychological layer lifts the myth beyond mere ancient sci-fi. It becomes a mirror asking who the real jailers are, celestial tyrants, or the lies we repeat to ourselves. The Nag Hammadi scrolls were buried for a reason. Their message that divinity isn't outsourced to distant gods but lies coiled within, waiting to burst its chains, was heresy to empires and churches alike. Yet even silenced, it persists. Every time someone questions the narratives they're handed, every flicker of doubt that there's more to life than what's sold to us, the Archons tremble. Because Gnosis, once awakened, can't be unlearned, the prison walls were never as solid as they seemed. Across civilizations and epochs, humanity's visions of the underworld ripple with eerie synchronicity: rivers to cross, thresholds to test, and cycles of destruction and renewal that mirror the natural world. Yet beneath these shared archetypes lies a deeper truth. Every culture's afterlife is a reflection of the landscape that birthed it. The Norse Helheim, with its frozen wastes and howling winds, mirrors the brutal winters of Scandinavia, where survival hinged on resilience and honor. Contrast that with the Maya Xibalba, a labyrinth of steaming caves and venomous creatures, its very air thick with the humidity of Central American jungles. Geography doesn't just inspire these realms, it breathes life into their terrors and their mercies. Take the rivers. In Greece, the Styx isn't merely a boundary, it's a pact. To cross its waters meant severing ties with the living world, a concept born from a culture that prized oaths and boundaries. The boatman Charon demands a coin, a direct echo of Greek burial rites where the dead were buried with obols beneath their tongues. Now shift to the Egyptian Duat, where the Nile's celestial twin carries souls not toward oblivion but judgment. Here, the river is lifeblood, its currents mirroring the annual floods that sustained a civilization. Even in Mesoamerica, the subterranean rivers of Xibalba churn with sacrificial blood, reflecting the very real cenotes where the Maya offered treasures and lives to appease the gods below. These waterways aren't arbitrary, they're sacred geographies rewritten in death. Then there are the guides from the psychopomps, those beings who shepherd souls. We see cultural values etched into their forms. Anubis, the jackal-headed Egyptian god, emerges from the desert's edge, a creature that scavenges the dead yet protects them, embodying the duality of decay and preservation. Compare him to the Valkyries, golden-haired and armored, who select only the worthy for Valhalla. Their presence reinforces Norse ideals. Glory isn't given, it's seized. Even the Cherokee's Octina, though a guardian of the darkening land, offers visions to those bold enough to face it. These guides aren't just escorts, they're gatekeepers of cultural ethos, rewarding what their societies deem virtuous. But the most profound parallel lies in the trials. Whether it's the heart weighed against Mat's feather or Orpheus's backward glance, these tests reveal universal anxieties. The Zoroastrian Chinvat bridge narrows to a blade for the guilty, while the Maya hero twins outwit death gods in a ballgame of wits. Notice the pattern. Cold climates favor endurance, Helheim's starving shades, while tropical regions demand cunning, Xibalba's hallucinatory traps. Even judgment takes on the hues of its homeland. The Inuit Sedna withholds sea creatures when taboos are broken, tying morality directly to survival in the Arctic. Meanwhile, the Aztec Mictlan's 9 layers reflect an empire obsessed with cyclical time, where even death is a journey toward renewal. Yet the most striking shared thread is rebirth. Osiris rises from dismemberment to rule the Duat. Inanna ascends from Ker's hook. The hero twins resurrect as celestial bodies. These aren't just happy endings, they're affirmations that death, like seasons or harvests, is a transition, not an end. Even in darker traditions like the Norse Ragnarök, annihilation precedes a new world rising from the ashes. the underworld then isn't just a destination. It's a crucible reforging souls and sometimes entire cosmos into something new. What emerges from these parallels isn't just a map of human fear or hope, but a testament to our need to make sense of the unknown. The icy grip of hell, the cloying heat of Xibalba, the bureaucratic halls of Diyu, each is a mirror held up to the living world, distorted but recognizable. They tell us that how we imagine the end says everything about how we value the journey. The whispers of ancient underworlds never truly fade. They simply shape-shift, resurfacing in the stories we tell today. Take Hadestown, the Tony-winning musical that reimagines Orpheus and Eurydice's tragedy as a bluesy parable of capitalism and resilience. Here, Hades isn't just a god of the dead. He's a slick industrialist, his underworld a rust belt factory where souls trade freedom for false security. The river Styx becomes a railroad track, and Eurydice's hunger isn't metaphorical, it's the gnawing desperation of a worker with no options. This isn't just adaptation, it's alchemy, proving these myths still hold a mirror to our deepest societal fears. Video games, too, are riddled with underworld callbacks. In Hades, the roguelike masterpiece from Supergiant Games, Zagreus's frantic escapes from his father's domain are steeped in classical lore, Cerberus as a lovable hellhound, the Styx as a revolving door of death and rebirth. But the game's brilliance lies in its inversion. Here, the underworld isn't a prison. It's a dysfunctional home layered with familial tensions and dry humor, where even Sisyphus gets a redemption arc. Meanwhile, in God of War, Norse Hell is a frozen wasteland where Kratos confronts not just monsters, but the specters of his own past. The myths aren't just backdrops, they're active participants in the hero's journey. Television twists these legends even further. Supernatural's Hell is a bureaucratic nightmare complete with paperwork and demonic middle managers, a darkly comic nod to Dante's meticulously organized Inferno. The show's version of the Crossroads demon, offering deals for souls, echoes the Greek fates or the Celtic fair folk beings who exploit human desperation with gleeful precision. And in Neil Gaiman's The Sandman, death isn't a grim reaper but a perky goth girl, while Lucifer's kingdom borrows equally from Milton's Paradise Lost and Mesopotamian underworlds, blurring the lines between rebellion and ennui. Literature mines these myths for psychological depth. In Gaiman's American Gods, the backstage of reality resembles a composite underworld, part Egyptian Duat, part Norse Yggdrasil, where forgotten gods cling to relevance. Madeline Miller's Circe gives us an ear thick with the ghosts of drowned sailors, echoing Odysseus's encounters with the dead. Even children's books like Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series repackage Hades as a moody CEO, his underworld a neon-lit Los Angeles where the dead queue like commuters. Riordan's genius, he makes the myths feel lived in, transforming ancient fears into modern teenage dilemmas. The most fascinating adaptations, though, are the subtle ones, the ones that don't announce their origins. The Matrix's Machine City, with its endless metallic night, channels the Gnostic Archon's prison world. Pan's Labyrinth's Pale Man, devouring children while seated at a grotesque feast, is a dead ringer for the Celtic Fomorians or the Greek Chronos. And what is Black Panther's ancestral plane, if not a high-tech reimagining of the Dreamtime, where the dead walk alongside the living in a golden savanna? These echoes aren't accidents, they're proof that the underworld's themes loss, judgment, transformation are universal. So why do these myths endure? Because they're more than stories, they're blueprints for understanding the parts of life that defy logic, grief, guilt, the unknown waiting beyond our last breath. When Hadestown's Orpheus turns for one final glance, we feel that ache in our bones. When Zagreus battles his way past the Hydra, we recognize our own struggles. The underworld isn't just a setting, it's the shadow we all must face, no matter what century we live in. And as long as we keep telling stories, the dead will never stop whispering back. Why do these ancient visions of the underworld still grip our imaginations? It's not just about the chilling spectacles of judgment or the eerie landscapes, it's about the raw, universal truths they force us to confront. Every culture's underworld myth, from the frozen wastes of Helheim to the bureaucratic halls of Diyu, is a reflection of our deepest fears and fiercest hopes. Fear of oblivion, yes, but also the desperate longing for justice, for a world where actions have consequences, where tyrants answer for their crimes, and where love might just conquer death, if only for a moment. These stories are the oldest safety nets humanity ever wove, catching us as we stare into the abyss and whisper, "What if?" Consider the common threads, the rivers that divide the living from the dead, the guardians who test the soul's worth, the scales that weigh a lifetime in a single breath. These aren't random details, they're cultural responses to the same gnawing questions. Does anything wait beyond the veil? Will I be remembered? Does goodness mean anything when the lights go out? The Aztecs answered with Mictlan's gauntlet of endurance. The Egyptians banked on the heart's honesty against a feather. The Norse demanded courage even in the grey twilight of Helheim. Each underworld is a manifesto declaring what its people valued most, not in theory, but in the face of annihilation. Yet there's a paradox at play. The more we try to codify the afterlife, the more slippery it becomes. Dante's Inferno maps hell with geometric precision, only to have Francesca's love story puncture its moral certainty. The hero twins outsmart Xibalba's death gods, yet their victory can't erase the cost of the game. Even Sedna, drowning in her own bitterness, reminds us that divinity isn't immune to pain. These myths don't just comfort or terrify, they complicate. They force us to sit with ambiguity, to reckon with the idea that death might not simplify our messy lives but amplify them. So here's the real question: which underworld would you dare to enter? Would you brave the Duat's judgment, betting your heart balances against Maat's feather? Or would you risk the Chinvat bridge where your own conscience holds the scales? Maybe you'd gamble on Inanna's cunning or Orpheus's artistry, trusting love to carve a path where none exists. The choice reveals more than preference. It mirrors what you value, what you fear losing, and what you'd trade to get it back. These stories endure because they're not just about death. They're about the choices we make while we're still alive. So tell me in the comments which underworld calls to you, and more importantly, are you ready for what it would demand in return?